I want to apologise in advance, but we have to draw a very clear and understood line in relation to evacuation centres. When the immediate threat of the storm is no longer felt by the community, we will not continue to operate them. And as the day wears on, we will be closing down evacuation centres once the SES believes that the threat to the local community has been lifted. Our efforts in relation to housing for that community are ongoing, but they're perennial challenges. They're very difficult. I want to reiterate and emphasise they're not going to be solved with the permanent evacuation centres, and I don't want people to be disappointed when the government announces that we're not continuing with their operation once the threat has been relieved inside those communities.
If we can just start with the evac centres are closing, what happens to, there's about 1,000 people either at an evac centre or in hotels and motels put up by the government. Where are they going to go?
Yeah, I mean, it's a perennial problem. We've got a real pressing housing problem, particularly on the North Coast. I think that the Northern Rivers region is one of the highest areas of homelessness in the state, if not the country. We know that the government's targeted efforts when it comes to building public housing have been focused on that region. The government contributed $5 billion, the largest amount any government has ever contributed to social and public housing in the history of New South Wales at the last budget. But evacuation centres are not going to be long-term solutions for homelessness on the Northern Rivers. And I just want to be really transparent and clear. We've been transparent through this entire emergency. That's not going to end now that we're getting to the back end of Alfred. I want to be very clear about these evacuation centres. They can't operate longer than they were intended to. If that happens, there are a whole range of other issues that we have to deal with, and I want to be very clear with the community. Once the evacuation order has been lifted for that community, we are not going to continue to run the evacuation centre. We're not doing it in a heartless way. We're just being realistic about what we can stand up in a safe way across a vast geographic area in a short space of time.
But I appreciate what you're saying about these can't be up forever, but there is still a lot of rain about. We've just heard from countless officials here about talking about how the weather situation hasn't totally.
Yeah, well, I want to make it clear we're not going to. There will be no evacuation centres closing while there'll be no evacuation centres closing while there's an evacuation order that's still outstanding. But once the evacuation orders have been lifted, we are not in a position to run permanent evacuation centres. That's very clear.
But what if your home's not safe to go back to on an
Well, clearly, if that's the case, the centre will stay open. Is there anyone else?